Okay, so the first question I wanted to ask is something. Thank
You
you.
have your
Thank
list.
you, by the way. I do
You
have
have
my
your
list.
list of
Thank
questions.
you so
Oh
much.
my.
It was funny when I sat down yesterday to write out my questions. I was like, wow, I have a lot of questions for you. Even though I've been your student for years and I get to spend all this time with you, I feel like there's always such a wealth that I can.
But when you have the opportunity to put a bright light on me and just question me,
Yeah, exactly.
what the hey?
I have to take advantage. So the first question I came up with is something that sort of, it seems like it's kind of a trend right now. Like Elizabeth Gilbert started it before with the TED Talk about creativity. And then there's like all these books and all these processes of like, what is creativity? And it's this gift from the gods. And I know for myself, there are moments in time when I feel like creatively abound. And then there are other times when I just feel like the most boring person on the planet. I can't come up with anything. And I was just wondering if you could explain sort of your take on the nature of creativity and if there's a process of
I gotta say a bunch of
creating it.
things that are just not creating creativity.
Creating creativity,
There's a creative
yeah. Or
act,
is it like a muscle that you
or
can
a scientific
build?
act.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I normally speak of science and creativity as sort of being somewhat opposite, but they're not really. I mean, inherent in science is this notion that we can have free will, and there's even in science things like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle that talks about our limits on how we can observe things and stuff like that. But a point is, if we have something that we can predict, it becomes not creative at all. It has no free will, and it's science. And if it seems to have free will, we see it as things, parts of it that are not predictable and thereby creative. It creates. It is the thing that comes from it is not a function of that which comes before in any way that we can predict. It's as if this thing birthed something totally anew and unpredictable. If it's predictable, it's not creative.
Right.
So, of course, we as humans feel we have free will, and that's sort of interesting, but it doesn't mean we do. It just means we can't see our own programming enough to say that we're just robots. If it ever comes about that we find that we are truly just robots, automata of sorts, I think all creativity is out the window then.
Totally, because then it's just pre-programmed into you.
Yeah, so that which makes us not a scientific predictable thing is creativity. Now, most people take creativity and, unfortunately, creativity in itself has a more rigorous or, I would say, pure aspect. And then, as with many things, and we as humans love to do this, use it as an excuse. There's a saying that talent, it's by Schopenhauer, talent hits the target no one else can see. No one else can hit. And genius hits the target no one else can see. So whenever I hit my volleyball, I serve my volleyball off of the court completely, it's just genius. That's using something as an excuse. The same thing with creativity. Someone comes up with something that has no rhyme or reason. It's creative. And somehow, a lot of times that imparts a type of virtue to it. So for example, if someone's just being lazy, some people think it's creative.
Right.
There's a lot of things like that. But I would say in its good sense, creativity is an expression of the human spirit. If we see ourselves as not robots, and we have this somehow innate animus, this portion of us, this, what you might say, metaphysical, this soul, creativity has that as its source. Now, some people might say, oh, well, all right, creativity comes through. Well, maybe it comes through that. Maybe it's the window. But all the other predictable parts of the universe operate much like a machine, and then you have this creative animus. It is true that people are sort of an intersection between what you might call the explainable science and the never explainable mysticism. The whole notion of qualia, the fact that I see something that has redness, but redness is something that's unexplainable, really unmeasurable. We can measure red. Both of us consistently see something as red. We can create a machine that detects red. But the redness in red is something that, as of now, is very personal to us. Our whole experience of the universe, whether it's Beethoven or the stars or redness, is personal to us, and right now stands behind an impenetrable veil, and is thereby a type of mysticism. So are humans completely programmable, predictable, at least right now by human expression and thinking? No, we can't explain ourselves like machines. We can't write the equations of our behavior yet. And creativity is that which we can't explain. Now, of course, we like to think of creativity in a functional sense. Creativity as applied to the arts. But one could say that the essence of creativity is biopoiesis, which is the creation of life. Here we have this inanimate planet. We have all these different chemical sort of things going on, this environment, maybe even creating things like amino acids. And then somewhere along the line, there's this spark, a flash, whatever it was. And now there's this thing that we call life that we can't quite explain, except it has certain characteristics. It holds itself out against physics. You know, life maintains itself in a certain way that non-life doesn't. And of course, as we get more advanced in science, we see a number of things that seem to straddle this boundary. We can't tell if they're alive or not. But the robust experience of life is it's this thing that goes of its own accord. And in the human body, when life leaves the human body, it seems now to just decay into just the physics of the universe, this chemicals and mass, all these different things that just, and the life is gone. So creativity seems to sprout up out of nowhere. Because if it sprouted from somewhere, if we could write an equation where it came from, then it would be definable. Right. So you might have to say that creativity thereby sort of pervades the universe. It just goes through it and is there inherent somehow in it. So you might say that between chaos and structure, between science and creativity, we have this structure that we experience as the universe. And when we are being creative, hopefully we tap into that force unexplainable by science, as opposed to being in the force that's very explainable by science, inertia, and just calling that our creativity because we're lazy.
So then if that's the nature of creativity, is there some way that you can practice the muscle so it doesn't feel so reactive and still not pre-programmed, but it's something that you can slip into easily, or something that you can access at will, or something like that?
When you say that, you're asking more for applied creativity. You know, your subconscious, the way your pupils move, a whole bunch of things may have creativity involved.
Right.
You know, I mean, certainly you can say they move with respect to light a certain way and things like that. But in all of physics, we find there's this, what you might call a minor unpredictability. And in behavior, there's these things that are minor unpredictabilities that we call free will. So creativity abounds. So what you want to do is channel it into something that's socially acceptable and labeled as creativity.
I guess so, or maybe just the root of something that you produce.
I mean, how do you know you're being creative? I produce a bunch of curriculum. I have no idea if that's creative.
Yeah, well, I mean, it feels
it's useful.
I think creativity, to me, like, it has to do with generating something that hasn't existed before, to share a feeling, share an experience. Like, it has to do with, I mean, art.
That's just expression.
Okay. But then there's expression that's very rote and very, like, controlled and very formulaic that you see over and over. And then there's expression that's, like, very new or profound or effective, innovative, you could even say. So to me, there's different levels of creativity in that.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Do you think the best actors are the most creative?
I think they're the most authentic.
Right.
So maybe not.
So, I mean, what I would ask, what's the use of being able to label what you do as creativity, or someone's being creative?
Interesting. I don't know. I think I just like, I have an interest, and I think it's pretty common. I guess it has more to do with just like generating work that's relatable, but generating, I guess, work, like something original, something that's interesting and compelling. And
well, that's the thing. You see, creativity somehow imports with it these positives of interesting and, you know, new and surprising and, you know, all sorts of fireworks and flowers and butterflies and rocks. But, see, creative.
Yeah.
But, you know, the opposite of creative, if you look at it as either rote or scientific or methodological or whatever you want to call it, that almost becomes pejorative. That person's not creative. Oh, well, then what are they? Well, they're boring.
Right.
No, fun. You see, you're going to entertain me, that's creative, because it's totally by surprise.
Right.
If I know it's coming and I completely know it's coming, then it's not creative, it's scientific, and therefore it's no fun.
Interesting.
But I don't necessarily agree with the cultural tints and slants on creativity.
Right.
So I think,
Interesting.
what is the basis of actually what you're asking?
So it's almost like I'm like seeing it more as like the difference between something that's like entertaining versus something that's just original
or surprising.
or surprising. But surprising even leads to just entertaining.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.